I'm going out there to take down the giant and orange monster. You two stay here and make sure they don't escape." "Affirmative," said Parker, saluting. "You, Baldy!" Henderson pointed to a random guard. "Open up those big sliding doors." "Yes, sir," said the soldier, saluting. The soldier pressed the button, and the doors slid open automatically, like the doors on a spaceship or a train. "I love that," said Henderson smugly to himself. As soon as he left, the sliding doors immediately closed, behind him, leaving the 8 superheroes in the dome room with Parker and Thompson, and 2 other guards, unsure of what to do now. "What a weirdo," said Gary, happening to have overheard the general. The others stared at him oddly, then at the guards, who all glared menacingly at them. Without a word, everybody walked to the center of the dome, somewhat crestfallen. "Hey, hey, hey," said Pedro. "Now what?" "We need a plan," replied Carly. Richard snapped his fingers. "Hey, I think I've got it. Gather around." The 8 superheroes all huddled together as Richard started to whisper an escape plan. The guards said nothing, but watched them with deep suspicion. Meanwhile, in downtown Reno, James was still rampaging and threatening everybody menacingly. Fortunately, he still hadn't killed anybody, but by this time the streets were cleared and people were either hiding in buildings and alleyways or in subway stations. As James stormed around looking for victims, he got blasted near the side of his hip. The blast had no effect on him whatsoever, no doubt because of his superpowers shielding him. But James still looked up angrily. High in the air were the fighter jets from Area 86 attempting to shoot him. Enraged, James picked up a nearby ice cream stand, and as he lifted it high in the air, the fighter jets, seeing what James was doing, immediately retreated. James, however, taking careful aim, threw the ice cream stand at one of the fighter jets. The pilot of the jet, however, saw this coming and immediately activated his parachute before his plane got hit and exploded. James angrily watched as the other planes disappeared, while the one pilot safely parachuted to the ground as his plane exploded. He gave chase, running faster and faster until he managed to leap over several tall apartment buildings. Meanwhile, on a desert highway, Eddie, Peter, and Clara hopped out of a bus into a remote station where, less than a mile away, was the dreaded Area 86. Without hesitation, the 3 of them made their way towards it. Meanwhile, still in Area 86, the cameras turned their attention away from the Mighty Nine. To them, this was the signal to put Richard's escape plan into action. "Right then," said Carly. "Remember the plan?" They all nodded. "Ready. Now!" Gary started making what looked like some kung fu poses, pointing down at the feet of the 2 guards on duty at the moment, who were standing by the door. The 2 guards, seeing this, looked down, and suddenly they screamed in terror, for their lower bodies were missing. They ran around in circles, screaming like banshees, their arms flailing around until they collided with one another and fell flat on their backs, knocking themselves unconscious. Gary made another kung fu move with his arms, and within seconds, the guards' lower bodies reappeared. "Cool," said Gary, amazed. "Who'd have thought I could also make other people invisible, too?" "Y'all are up, Carly," said Christy. Carly prepared to fly, but before her pink whirlwind could even appear, the 2 bodyguards appeared and began advancing towards them menacingly. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" yelled Parker. "Looks like we're going to have to go to Plan B," said Carly in an undertone. "Pedro! Reginald!" Frank signaled them. "We're on it," they said immediately. "You're going to get it now," yelled Thompson. But just as the 2 sergeants had reached them, Pedro and Reginald, screeching their battle cries, lunged at the 2 big men, using their superpowers to attack them, making battle cries with every attack. While this was going on, Eddie, Peter, and Clara, disguised as soldiers, having knocked out 3 soldiers and putting on their uniforms and helmets, snuck out of the elevator and down the corridor. Within 30 seconds or so, Pedro and Reginald had the 2 battered and bruised sergeants lying on the ground, knocked unconscious. They both bowed politely as the others applauded them and then high-fived and low-fived each other. "Well done, Pedro, lad. You too, Reggie. You're up, Carly. Take two," said Christie. Carly flew up to the dome roof, and using her super strength attempted to break through the carbonium. But she couldn't. After making several jabs at it, she gave up and floated back down to the floor. "Ugh," she groaned. "I can't get through. The general wasn't kidding. That carbonium really is hard stuff." Unknown to the gang, one of the guards, temporarily regaining consciousness, pressed a red button to trigger the alarm, then fell back into unconsciousness. Suddenly there was electronic beeping, sirens wailing, alarms blaring, and red lights flashing, scaring the Mighty Nine. "That's not a good sound," said Joey timidly. At that moment, laser guns all over the wall started firing, trying to shoot at the Mighty Nine, but they dodged them all, though narrowly. Thinking quickly, Gary created a giant force field. "Quick, dudes and dudettes, get behind my force field!" Everybody immediately did so, cowering as the lasers kept firing, but did not penetrate the force field. Meanwhile, Eddie, Peter, and Clara, with their disguises off, were in the security room connected with Henderson's office, searching around for evidence when they heard the alarm. Looking through the windows to the dome room and seeing the chaos going on, they started running around for a button to turn off the alarm. Clara found one labeled Alarm Shutoff Switch and pressed it. As the alarms were silenced, the red light stopped flashing and the laser stopped firing. It took a few seconds for everybody to realize what had just happened. Gary deactivated the force field as they looked around. "Dudes, what just happened?" "Never mind that now," said Frank, suddenly alarmed. "Look!" The others looked in Frank's direction and gasped, for they could see the two bodyguards groaning as if they were starting to regain consciousness. "We gotta hurry!" squealed Joey. "But we cannot get through the roof!" screamed Pedro. "Wait!" Reginald exclaimed, thinking quickly. "There is one way to break any kind of barrier. Some very powerful sonic sound waves." But how can we do that?" Carly asked. Reginald pointed directly at Joey, who looked confused. But once everybody turned their attention to Joey, he became alarmed as he realized what Reginald was getting at. "Joey, you've got to use one of your super belches to break through the carbonium," said Reginald. "I can't," said Joey, dismayed. "I haven't had any spicy foods for nearly 4 days. Richard came up to Joey and said, "Sounds like you could use a super churning." Without warning, Richard picked Joey up and shook him so fast that the vibrations made Joey look like a mere blur. After about 5 seconds or so, Richard let go of Joey and put him down. Joey now had his game face on. "All right, stand back, everybody," he said confidently, "and cover your ears." "With pleasure," said Pedro as he plugged up his ears. Joey looked up towards the dome roof, inhaled deeply, and let out a thunderous belch. The sound of the belch violently shook the entire room, and sure enough, the carbonium in the dome's roof shattered. Pieces of carbonium fell to the floor, both in small fragments and large chunks. "Whew!" said Christie, examining it. "He wasn't kidding. It is pretty thick." "Vamonos, everybody," called Pedro. They all looked up, and there was Pedro, his body stretched from the floor all the way up to the shattered roof. "Use me like a bungee jump and I'll help you over the top," he said. The others laughed, while also smiling appreciatively at Pedro's cleverness. One by one, everybody used Pedro's stretchy legs to jump over the dome roof, except Carly, of course, who flew up instead. However, just as Pedro cleared Joey, the last one out, over the roof, Sergeant Thompson regained consciousness and watched as Joey and Pedro disappeared over the roof and out of sight. Perplexed, Thompson got to his feet and grabbed a walkie-talkie from his pocket and spoke into it. "Get me the boss." Back in the general's office, Eddie, Peter, and Clara, seeing the Mighty Nine escaping, cheered and made their way out. But not before Eddie, seeing a piece of paper on the general's desk, the general's plan, grabbed it and looked at it with deep suspicion. "Come on, Eddie," Clara called. "Guys, look at this," Eddie said. "What is that?" asked Peter. "Hey, what are you kids doing in here?" The three of them turned around and gasped. It was General Henderson, flanked by Sergeants Parker and Thompson, running through the corridor. Eddie, Peter, and Clara made a run for it. "After them!" ordered Henderson. The two sergeants ran after them down the corridor, and Eddie, Peter, and Clara, realizing they would catch up and beat them, knocked several things over throughout the corridor, including a huge wooden chest with shelves of guns. This stopped Parker and Thompson, who promptly tripped over the chest and landed on top of each other. General Henderson, following closely behind, stopped dead and smacked both of the bodyguards as hard as he could. "Get up, you idiots!" shrieked Henderson. "Catch them!" Thanks to this distraction, Eddie, Peter, and Clara made it to the elevator, but as the elevator doors started closing, the sergeants caught up and then Thompson held his arm out to keep the door from closing. Peter and Clara were unable to shake him off, but Eddie looked up to the ceiling for a sign and put his hands together. "Lord, forgive me for hurting my own kind," he prayed. Without hesitation, Eddie bit Thompson's arm. He screamed in pain as Eddie forced his arm out, finally allowing the elevator door to close all the way. Peter and Clara sighed in relief as Eddie wiped the sweat off his forehead. Meanwhile, yes, I know I've been saying it a lot, the Mighty Nine made it to the ground safely outside Area 86. Once they were all out, they cheered. "We actually did it!" Carly yelled triumphantly. "Yeah, we actually did it!" yelled Clara happily. The Mighty Nine stared in confusion as they saw Eddie, Peter, and Clara running up to them, looking triumphant. Hold on.